Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Akulmach Technologies, and welcome to Jeremy Blain Live. As the name suggests, we have Jeremy Blain with us, and Jeremy does not require any special introduction. He has worked as a chief executive in the leadership role across the world, and we are very honored to have Jeremy with us. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, CK. Great to be here.
Right, Jeremy. So I don't want to basically waste time of our viewers. I will straight away start asking you about the digital age, which has finally arrived. You know, we needed a virus to bring the digital age. So, but nevertheless, it is here. But what does it mean? I want to take your opinion on that.
Well, you've got that absolutely right. We're finally there. In fact, it's synonymous with Industry 4.0, which is defined as the digital age. So it's a natural progression of where we've come through from the different industrial revolutions. And this one is defined as the physical, the biological, and the digital all coming together. So the best example of that I can give you is kind of, let's say, a wearable. So if you've got an Apple Watch or technology in your clothes, it's starting to use things that we're having together, not just the handsets in our phone. We're at the very beginning of this now, and about so-called digital transformation actually for many years, but you're absolutely right, it took the pandemic to be the biggest accelerator of digital transformation since the iPhone in 2007.
So, Jeremy, I think the subject about digital age, whether it is here or it is not here, or is it going to be status quo, I think these are all old stuff. So, I think we can just move ahead from there. I want to ask you from your network and your colleagues, what are they talking about? What are the opportunities for small businesses going forward?
Mm. Well, the you heard me say so-called digital transformation because I agree with you. We talk about it so much, and it almost overwhelming for many organizations. And in fact, many organizations have failed in digital transformation. According to IBM and Forbes, 84% are failing in strategy execution as far as digital adoption goes. And one of the reasons for that was because they were focused mainly on the technology, because it was so kind of, this word digital kept coming. But also a very big key component part of this was that in a piece of research that I did last year around this state of digitalization, essentially, we found that across 3 continents, 40% of all leaders were just simply not ready. And that was not ready in their head as well as not ready in capability. But I'm happy to say, actually, I've pulled out a few things from that India was one of the top performing countries stroke regions in the world around that, and Asia Pacific as a whole, if I count South Asia in that as well, is really the accelerating region. So the big opportunity is actually to stop talking about it as digital transformation and start talking about it as whole business transformation. It's not about having a digital strategy, it's a strategy for a digital world, essentially. So the big opportunity for small, medium businesses, as much as large businesses who are really struggling, actually, is to start to think about what are the component parts of that journey that, yes, bring together the technology part, but most importantly, bind together the human touch and the human heart of our businesses, because that's where success will happen.
So, Jeremy, as you mentioned that even the large corporations are struggling. So, I think the biggest confusion today is that they allowed work from home to all their employees, and in fact, Google announced that they will have work from home for next 3 years across the world. But that is not the transformation. I think the impact of this is much profound, and there are going to be some businesses which will have to close their shops, or there are some other businesses which have to transform into something else, and there are new businesses which will come and acquire those places which are a quasi between digital and physical space. So next 1 year or 2 years, what are the opportunities for Indian companies? Why I'm asking this question, Jeremy, because let me explain. Slightly longer question, but let me explain. uh, you see, India drives the IT of the world today, as some people speak. But I think it's a collective responsibility. but there are $15 billion business which happens usually until 2019 uh, from India to the rest of the world. And it's not a small number, 50 to $100 billion of
Mm,
IT projects which were happening out of India. So what will
yeah.
happen to that realistically? So I think I'll take you're a best person to ask this question. What are the opportunities? Because there are a lot of confusion in the field. People are waiting for status quo.
Um, yes, and in fact, I strongly believe this is the coming of age of markets like India that are strongly invested in infrastructure like this, that have a workforce which is very tech savvy, very millennial driven, if you like, but perhaps hasn't realized that potential as yet. This is the coming of age. You mentioned a point about this where we are right now. If I go back just, when I say just 30 weeks or so to the beginning of this year, 44% of all companies in the world did not even allow remote working, let alone be geared up for it. Over 80% of them by the end of March 2020 were scrabbling to do it. This is absolutely the opportunity out there in terms of infrastructure, beyond systems and platforms. This is about, for me, firmly believe, because of where India is in this marketplace, it is about being a champion of ecosystems for me. It is around taking that out to the world to say, forget individual systems and platforms. You need everything to talk together. This is, if you like, the way that we might introduce the Internet of Things, for example. But in the business realm, we need everything to talk together. This is the opportunity for many businesses in India and outside of India to start to think differently and bind things together. And it's a very interesting point that you mentioned about this. Where do we go from here? There are too many organizations and business leaders talking about, oh, I can't wait to go back to ... or back to normal, whatever. I'm about going forward to possibilities. There is no greater possibility than now. And you're absolutely right, CK, is that there are companies that are going to fail. But this is a hugely transformational period that we're in, and it's not going to last very long, because this is where we are now, that those organizations that have managed to shift and change are the ones that are really accelerating, and this is where we'll see accelerated success, accelerated failure. But I have to point to some of the research that I did last year and evolved this year as well, as far as how well positioned India is. In terms of the 10 key factors that drive a high proportion of readiness and willingness to do this and capability of them, India are at the top of the list. This is being able to understand what a digital visioning is all about, a leadership commitment and capability that this is the way forward, a readiness to do this in India and outside it, the fact that progress has been made, and that things like adopting agile is there, being cyber secure is at the heart of the solutions that are coming out of India, being able to measure the more digital aspects of where we're going, because we shouldn't be looking at measuring our businesses how we used to. What are the digital measures that help us understand that we're making progress, and helping big data make our decisions? If India, who are clearly at the top of the list of this, start to deliver and repeat that mantra outside it, that's where I think the growth can come from exponentially. The time's now, CK.
Yes, I think I also agree the time is now, but I see a lot of people in and around me in my office and in the neighborhood. They are still waiting for the good times to come back. They don't want to get out of this whole syndrome of not being able to meet somebody for a meeting. Like, for example, we are meeting digitally here, and that is a reality. But some of these people are very shy to meet. But let me get out of this rut and ask you a totally different question. You see, before the pandemic started, the era was fintech. We used to hear about fintech and a lot of transformation which was being brought by the tier 2 segment of the financial technology, because large banks are already transformed many years back. So they were already on the path of transforming the middle tier and the lower tier. But after the pandemic, it's the mid tech and ed tech. These are the two
Mm.
new words which have come up. However, I must say that even these companies are only using this medtech and edtech as a buzzword. I don't think anything is being done in that era. I mean, if you go to schools, simply using Google, technology to show your face is not teaching. So I think the time is now to create an application which will transform physical school into digital one. And similarly in medtech. So I think there are opportunities, and I'd like to take your opinion about that.
I fundamentally agree on this, and there are actually, I must say though, there are pockets of excellence. Certainly within the health field, I think we see now. We heard the news last night about Pfizer, and about kind of how they're accelerating things apart as far as a vaccine goes, whatever. These are the small points that help it, but it's not, my way of looking at it, it's not joined together yet. So there are pockets of digitalized excellence, but it's not together. And I think one of the reasons why that is that we haven't got the unleashing backup technology yet in place that allows us to really drive the power behind this. So I'm talking about 5G technology, which is about 10 times as fast as 4G, microcomb technology, where by its kind of a chipset that would essentially allow you to download a terabyte of data in a few seconds, which is from then beyond that is quantum. These are the unleashing of things, smart cities, and binding a lot of these technologies together. But I think you're right, is that many industries that are talking about it, and there is far more talking about it around ed tech, learn tech, insure tech, fintech, health tech, you name it. There's lots of new vocabulary, by the way, which is being invented at the same time as well, which is also confusing. But education is a really interesting one for me, because I also have worked in the L&D industry, corporate, for corporate training and corporate consulting for a while. And there's so much talk about it, but it really hasn't driven, and gone forward enough in the time. In fact, I'm going to be working with VIT quite soon in terms of consulting into them and advising them in terms of how ed tech can really start to come in to not just support what they're doing as an organization with their with their students, with their undergraduates and postgraduate students, but also the link and the bridge to the workplace and how that is. So there's a lot of great organizations and great educational establishments, particularly in India, who are really thinking about this, but binding it together is very difficult. Another one where actually I think there is more progress, and one less obvious one, is from space and the use of satellites. I think you may have heard the news about, I don't know when, it was about a few months ago, when Elon Musk launched this array of satellites that you can see sometimes going across the world, this sort of line of data. This is about to unleash the power of observational data. Now, where it was a little bit like you describe, insurance or education, are talking about ed tech and what have you. Yes, Earth observation data, that's great. It's our satellites giving us data on whether it's a data source from up here, giving us some information from here. That is now being transcended by not just a better array of things up here, but actually things that are on the ground at the same time. And that's called geospatial data. And that's like between an 8 to 12 times kicker between the power of data. And what that means is it brings all different sources of data to go beyond prediction, what we call predictive data, into prescribing the best of options moving forward, because we've got enough information. So these things are starting to come together, and I anticipate them to accelerate over this year. When I say this year, this next coming year, 2021. And by 2022, if we have this same conversation again, I think we could point to giant leaps rather than small changes.
Yes, Jeremy. In fact, we have heard about this. It's called Starlink by Elon Musk. It's a company which is being powered
Yes.
by Falcon X.
Yeah.
And I think they will have to have, if this succeeds, This is going to replace the 5G of Huawei. So I think we are all waiting for it and quite excited because if there are four satellites on my head, then I can have pretty much a very high speed of connectivity. So I think we are all waiting for the hardware side of it. But I think there is still a lot of scope when we say digital. So there is still a lot of scope to convert the whole perception of doing business. For example, there is going to be a lot of AI, which is going to come up in a big way, predictive learning. There are a lot of applications waiting to happen in ed tech and health tech. Uh, but I don't see too much activity, especially from Indians. I will say that frankly, I don't see too many apps being developed by Indian company which are sitting on the forefront of the IT revolution here.
You know what's interesting when you mention this is that while India, based on the research that I did, is very well positioned, I have to agree with you that the potential just simply isn't being realised. And when we understand, when we kind of go into why, and when we start to look at what you're just saying right there, we come to the human touch, which I would argue is stifling the acceleration of change. So, for example, the way I talk about it sometimes is to say that there is 20th century thinking and there's 21st century thinking. Now, there are a lot of really fantastic, great organizations that were started that are flourishing in the 21st century in India at the moment as well. And it's those and around the world that are the ones that have slowed in terms of their digital acceleration, if you like. It's the newer companies that are growing, which are the ones that are more ready to move forward. And there are some great examples of companies right around the world, actually, small startups that are making a big difference. But one of the problems is that to shift thinking from 20th century mindset is not just about we've got to now start thinking about digital. We've got to start thinking about our workforce being a completely different beast, not based in bricks and mortar, remote, a mixed workforce, or I call it a blended workforce, permanent workers, but equally independent workers who are part of our team. We don't have even structures that can manage that particularly well beyond managed services. We need a completely different mentality about what our culture in organizations needs to adapt and look at for the digital era. We need to bring our people with us. But in the research that I did, I go back to the point that 40% of leaders globally were not ready for this. 40% of that total were not even willing. They were apathetic. It's not my problem. I'm retiring in 5 years. It's somebody else's problem. This is not the attitude that we need. We need some of these leaders to stand up and be counted and say, you know what? I don't know all of this stuff and I need it. So we need to get beyond the traditional hierarchical approach that we're looking at, the position and authority that we might have, and the pride of not being able to admit that maybe we need to develop ourselves. Great example in Singapore, ABS Bank. The CEO, very enlightened CEO, Piyush Gupta, who held his hand up a few years ago and said, we need to be digital. And I don't know what this is. Neither do my management team. We need to get really uncomfortable with this. So they did a series of hackathons. They committed to it. They learned it. He learned it as well. And they're now voted for, I think, the third year running the best digital bank in the world. Their whole vision and purpose has changed beyond the bottom line, saying our whole sense of being is to make banking joyful. That is not a vision I've heard before, and so, but that is a vision for the digital era, because that actually unleashes a new way of thinking. How can we use technologies to do this? So, how can we mobilize technologies, as in put it onto our mobile, be mobile first driven, go beyond our bricks and mortars banks to have different relationships with our clients and attract millennials and Generation Z who view banking in a completely different way to what you and I do, CK. They have no interest in traditional banks. They're going for the new breed of banks like Starling, Monzo, Go Henry, these kind of things that are out there. So I think when we come back to India, there is, I think, the difference between the new breed of organizations and some of the traditional organizations is speed and perfection, actually. So speed, that ability to be agile and do things quickly, but also that ability to think that we do not need 100% solution. In fact, the co-CEO Jessica Tan of a Chinese company, insurance company called Ping An, said, actually, speed is the competitive advantage these days. A 70% solution can kill us. So, we have to be comfortable in getting a 70% solution out there and not waiting for a 100% solution, because the pace of change in technology these days means that you're constantly evolving it. It's like when we download an app, the very next day we're getting version 1.1, with a patch, and it's completely normal. SpaceX, we talked about Elon Musk before. It took him, I don't know many times, 13 times to get that rocket up into space. Look at it now. so I think there's lots of things going on there, but it is fundamentally an attitude piece at human level first, and that ability to think differently about what our businesses need to be to accelerate digital.
In fact, Jeremy, there are few businesses which are going through major trouble right now because of pandemic. I think there are serious issues related to the print media because nobody's buying. There is a serious threat to advertisers because there is no need to advertise because nobody's buying. So I think the whole scenario of business is in a limbo.
Yeah.
I think you have given enough examples to our viewers, and I know for sure you are truly a global citizen, and you work with a lot of chief executives, helping them in their journey. So I think the whole intention for me to bring you to Jeremy Blain live is to make sure that your message goes to some of these startups and SMEs which are struggling or not sure how to do things. They can actually come back to you and ask for your advice. So I think this is one of the things that we should do actually.
Yeah, actually, what's very interesting, after we did the piece of research last year that I'm talking about, what we realized was that how-to model or thing to help organizations through it. We had to invent one, because it's great. I can read McKinsey, I can read what Accenture is saying it, and they're looking at various component parts of this transformation, but not the whole thing. So actually, I had to invent a model, which I call the ticking clock, which actually does help organizations through this step by step in terms of 3 stages and 11 steps. Just kind of very, very simply trying to bring things together, because I do reinforce the point. What's important is coming away from the terminology digital transformation and looking at whole business model transformation, and then considering what that digital, technological, human component part is and how that links to our customers for the future as well. And ultimately that's where we are. And I think one company in India, Tata Consulting, for example, well, in fact, the whole kind of organization is in a superb position to be the champion for Indian business outside of India, and to start actually sponsoring, and I know they do have these incubators within the organization that is sponsoring a lot of these smaller organizations within India. And I think it's time to give them that springboard and start to really shout out loud, here's what we can do. Here's what we can do versus kind of California and Mountain View. You need to talk to us.
That's right. I think that's a very good message that you have given. I think we can end our discussion today because digital transformation is a very, very huge subject, and it's huge, and it may be very different for different people. So I think you are here with us, and that is a very good thing because a lot of knowledge is there within your pedigree, your network, and anybody who wants to get into digital transformation can reach out to you, can reach out to us. We can connect you with that person, and you're already working with worldwide CXOs helping many organizations. So I think with that we can end our discussion. Jeremy, it was certainly my greatest pleasure to talk to you, and we will catch up next Tuesday with some other interesting business subject.
Episode 2 coming your way. Thank you very much, CK.
Thank you and take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.